Have you ever believed in love at first sight? No, not the kind of fleeting attraction that makes you pause for a heartbeat, but the kind that collides with you literally and changes your entire world in an instant. Well, today, you're about to step into a story that begins with the rush, a collision, and a spark that no one could have predicted. So stay with me until the very end, because this isn't just a story about chance, it's about fate, destiny, and the kind of love that makes you believe again. It all started in the glass towers of New York City, where the morning air buzzed with the sound of honking horns, clattering heels, and hurried footsteps of people who lived every day as though time was money. And at the very top of it all was Alexander Knight, the billionaire CEO of Knight Enterprises, a man known for his relentless drive, razor-sharp suits, and reputation as someone who had no time for distractions and not even love. The world called him cold, efficient, untouchable, but inside, beneath the perfectly tailored exterior, was a man who carried loneliness like a shadow, a man who had built an empire yet never found a home in someone's heart. On that fateful morning, Alexander was late for a meeting that could seal a deal worth billions, a meeting his board had been preparing for weeks, and the last thing he needed was a delay. He stormed through the lobby of his skyscraper with his briefcase in hand, his polished shoes striking the marble floor like a drumbeat of urgency, his assistant barely keeping up with his stride. "Sir, the elevator is waiting," as she called, but before she could finish, the doors began to close, and Alexander lunged forward, slipping inside just in time. But fate wasn't done writing her script yet, because at that exact moment, someone else had darted into the lobby, clutching the small hand of a sleepy-eyed little girl in pigtails, juggling a worn messenger bag over his shoulder and a cup of coffee that threatened to spill with every hurried step. His name was Daniel Hayes, a single father doing his best to balance a demanding job as a graphic designer with the even more demanding job of raising his 6-year-old daughter, Lily, all on his own since his wife had walked out years ago. Daniel wasn't supposed to be there that morning. He usually dropped Lily off at school earlier, but a late alarm and a missing shoe had thrown his schedule into chaos, and now he was running late, desperate not to lose the freelance contract that was keeping food on their table. "Hold the elevator, please," he shouted, his voice echoing through the polished hall. The security guard reached for the button, but it was too late. The doors were nearly closed. That's when fate made her move. Alexander, annoyed and impatient, instinctively reached for the door open button, though he couldn't explain why. Maybe it was a flicker of humanity, maybe it was habit, or maybe it was destiny nudging his hand. The doors slid open just as Daniel stumbled in, nearly spilling his coffee but somehow managing to keep Lily steady on her feet. "Thank you, oh God, I'm so sorry," Daniel blurted, his cheeks flushed, his words tumbling over each other in nervous gratitude. He hadn't even looked up yet, too busy straightening Lily's backpack and wiping a coffee stain off his shirt. But when he finally lifted his gaze, his eyes met Alexander's, and in that instant, something shifted. Time slowed, the noise of the city vanished, and all that remained were two men, one at the peak of power but starved for connection, and the other exhausted yet carrying a warmth that could melt walls. Alexander's sharp gray eyes softened for the briefest moment as they locked with Daniel's deep brown ones, and Daniel felt a jolt he couldn't explain, a spark that left his heart stumbling faster than his feet had moments ago. Lily, blissfully unaware of the silent storm passing between the two men, tugged at her father's hand and asked with innocent curiosity, "Daddy, who's the fancy man?" Daniel flushed again, stammering, "You and no one, sweetheart, just a you ask someone important, I'm sure." Alexander, usually immune to such comments, actually chuckled, a low, surprised sound that startled even himself. The little girl's honesty had cracked through his armor in a way no boardroom negotiation ever could. And just like that, the elevator ride began, a ride neither of them would ever forget. Have you ever felt that a single moment, a single glance, could haunt you even when the world insists you should move on? That's exactly what happened to Alexander Knight. After that elevator ride, he couldn't stop thinking about Daniel Hayes and the little girl with pigtails who had looked at him like he wasn't just a billionaire CEO, but a person, someone worth seeing. The meeting that had once seemed so urgent blurred into background noise, his boardroom filled with voices that carried weight but not meaning, and for the first time in years, Alexander found himself distracted. Meanwhile, Daniel had walked out of that towering building with Lily's small hand still in his, but his heart felt heavier and lighter all at once, as though he had brushed against something extraordinary but completely out of reach. Life, however, has a way of weaving paths together when destiny isn't finished writing, and over the following days, chance began to play her hand again. Alexander spotted Daniel again 2 mornings later, this time in the cafe tilde copyright across the street, balancing his laptop and Lily's coloring book while trying to finish a design on a tight deadline. Daniel didn't notice him at first, too busy soothing Lily with a muffin while frantically clicking away on his laptop, but Alexander did, and for reasons he couldn't explain and not even to himself he walked over, leaving behind the untouched espresso his assistant had ordered for him. "You seem a broken bar busy," Alexander said, his deep voice cutting through Daniel's chaos like a calm but startling reminder of the elevator moment. Daniel nearly spilled his coffee again, his eyes widening when he realized who was standing in front of him. Hi, yes, sorry, were you working?" His words stumbled, but Lily, ever fearless, piped up, "Daddy, it's the fancy man again." Alexander couldn't help but laugh. A genuine laugh that startled Daniel as much as it startled himself. What followed wasn't dramatic, not in the grand cinematic sense, but it was profound in its simplicity. Alexander sat down. He didn't have to. He had meetings, investors, empires to run, but he chose instead to sit across from a single dad and his daughter, and in that choice lay the seed of something life-changing. As their conversation unfolded, Alexander learned pieces of Daniel's story of the struggles, the late nights, the constant balancing act of work and fatherhood, and something inside him shifted. He realized that while he had wealth beyond measure, Daniel carried a richness of love and resilience that money could never buy. And Daniel, in turn, discovered that beneath Alexander's polished exterior was a man who listened, who asked questions not out of obligation but genuine curiosity, a man who seemed lonelier than anyone he had ever met. The days that followed turned into a pattern of unexpected encounters at the cafe tilde copyright, quick chats in the lobby, elevator rides that seemed less like accidents and more like fate's design, and slowly, cautiously, walls began to crumble. Alexander found himself looking forward to the moments when Lily would tug his sleeve and call him fancy man, when Daniel's tired eyes would soften into a smile, when he could forget the cold weight of his empire and remember what it felt like to simply be seen. And Daniel, though hesitant, found himself leaning into those moments too, even as fear whispered in his ear that someone like Alexander belonged to a different world. But real Lovia doesn't care about worlds, or wealth, or walls. It cares about truth, about connection, about two hearts daring to beat in sync despite the odds. And so, on a rainy evening when Alexander offered Daniel and Lily a ride home instead of letting them wait in the storm, the fragile thread between them wove tighter. Inside the warmth of his sleek black car, with city lights blurring through rain-soaked windows, silence settled in, not uncomfortable, but full of unspoken words. Lily fell asleep against her father's side, and Daniel whispered,